to my live. And if you are watching the live, please put hashtag live. And if you're catching the replay, then put a hashtag replay in the comment section. This evening, I want to address an issue that is a worldwide problem: high blood pressure. And I'm going to talk about a little about what is high blood pressure, some staggering statistics, and what you can do to either manage it if you have already been diagnosed with high blood pressure or prevent yourself from developing high blood pressure. So first, I want to share a few statistics that I found on the CDC and the WHO websites. And you can also find information from other websites. But the first one that caught my attention is the first fact was that over 1.28 billion adults, that's billion, not million, billion with a B, adults aged 30 to 79 worldwide, this is worldwide statistics, have high blood pressure. That's a lot of people. 1.2 billion people worldwide, just between the ages of 30 and 79, are living with high blood pressure. But less than half of those persons actually know that they have high blood pressure. Many times it's like an incidental finding, or something happens, person gets unwell and takes them to the hospital, the clinic, the doctor. But many times people don't even know that they are walking around with their blood pressure sky high. And that is a cause for concern. And the reason why it's called the silent killer is because most of the time there are no symptoms associated with high blood pressure. You can have symptoms, it's not uncommon to have symptoms, but many times the symptoms are so silent or non-existent that persons are totally unaware that they have high blood pressure. And the only way to know what your blood pressure is to measure your blood pressure with a blood pressure machine. So first, I want to talk about what is blood pressure, and then what is high blood pressure, and what you can do to prevent yourself from developing high blood pressure. And if you already have high blood pressure, things that you can do to minimize the risk of complications. So I like to think of blood pressure, and I forgot to bring my toilet paper roll, so I'm just going to use this instrument here. So just imagine this is the artery, which is one of the vessels that transport blood to your body from the heart, oxygenated blood, most importantly. So just imagine this is the inside of the vessel. And so the pressure that is placed on the walls, on the inside of the arteries, what cause the blood pressure itself. That's what we're measuring on a blood pressure machine. So this is what a typical blood pressure machine would look like. And so when we place this on an individual's arm or on their forearm, we are measuring the amount of force that's placed on the walls on the inside of the vessels. Now, this is a very magnified version of what a vessel look like, but they are very, very tiny. They are smaller than, this is just a wire from a mouse, and they're smaller than this. So inside, if we were to cut this wire this way and look inside, the pressure that's inside of the hole, the space that the blood, where the blood is flowing, that cavity part, so the blood is going through here through the arteries, and that pressure that's caused on the walls, on the inside walls of the arteries, is what we're measuring on the machine. Now, why is high blood pressure Very, very important because blood rushes to every part of your body. Wherever there's vessel, there is blood flowing in that area from your head to your toe. And so anything that can affect the arteries can be affected by your blood pressure. So typically, when we're looking at a machine, there will be two numbers that we're measuring on here. A high number, which is usually the bigger number or the systolic measurement, and then the lower number or the bottom number or the diastolic. And basically what we're measuring is the heart pumping and the heart relaxing. So when the heart is pumping or contracting, that's the top number that we're measuring. And then when it relaxes, that's the bottom number that we're measuring. And both numbers are important because if you have an issue when the heart is pumping, it's going to be a problem. And if you're having issues when the heart is relaxing, then it's also going to be a problem. And now I want to share some more data that I found on the WHO website that 1 in 5 adults are living with high blood pressure. 1 in 5 adults are living with high blood pressure, but only 20% of those persons actually have their blood pressure under control. A small fraction, just 1/5 of the population who have been diagnosed with high blood pressure actually have their blood pressure under control. Now, there are different ways you can control your blood pressure. And for me, I usually advocate for non-medication options. And so that's what I'll be focusing on today. I will not be going into any details with medication, just the non-medication options. All right. So I want to speak about the different parts of the body that blood goes to. So I'm just going to focus on, there are 5 areas that I want to focus on. The head, where your brain is, your heart, your kidneys, your vessels, and your eyes. Those areas are areas that are usually affected when your blood pressure is not under control. And I'm not talking about your blood pressure going up one day and then everything goes haywire, but this is uncontrolled blood pressures, high elevated blood pressures over a prolonged period of time. Our bodies are so amazing that it will adapt to whatever is going on in the body. So it's almost like a rubber band. So bodies will stretch, it will bend, it will twist, it will adapt, but after a while, unless something is done to correct what is happening, it will eventually shut down. It will break down and it will wreak havoc in your whole body. So all of that to say that if your blood pressures are not controlled, if they are uncontrolled, they are elevated for a prolonged period of time, it can cause damage to your eyes, it can cause damage to your brain, it can cause damage to your heart, it can cause damage to your kidney, which is particularly common, and that is how persons end up on dialysis. And it can cause damage to the vessels in your body and any vessel. So mostly the legs, because that's where the biggest vessels are in your body, but it can affect any vessel in your body if your blood pressure is not under control. So what kind of blood pressure should we be looking for? Now I'm focusing on adults. I'm not talking about children because your blood pressure fluctuates. The normal reading will be determined by your age. It will also be determined by your level of physical activity and your lifestyle, and if you have any other underlying condition. And it's also important to note that normally, under normal circumstances, our blood pressure fluctuates throughout the day. So it's not going to be the same for the entire day. It will fluctuate. It goes up, it goes down, and it also fluctuates if we are under stress, if we are going through some sort of loss or damage, if we are experiencing pain, your blood pressure will be altered if you're having pain. So, usually, if somebody is in excruciating pain, or even if it's not, because just yesterday I saw a client and he was having pain in his thumb and his blood pressure went up slightly, but it did go up. But pain can cause our blood pressure to go up. Whether it's physical pain or emotional pain, it can affect your blood pressure. So, what kind of blood pressure we're looking for? So, this is a typical, because everybody is normal, will be slightly different depending on your age and all the things that I mentioned. And if you have any underlying condition, if you're taking medication, etc., if you have any congenital disease or condition, it can fluctuate. But the numbers that we're looking for is less than 120 for the top number or the big number, over less than 80. So you would hear 120 over 80, that's a normal blood pressure, but it should actually be less than 120 over less than 80 is the number that we are aiming for. Now, persons who are very athletic, so athletes, persons who are very active, if they are physically active or if they're in a job that has physical labor, their blood pressures tend to be a little bit lower. And persons who have a more sedentary lifestyle or maybe a more sit-down job, an office job that requires them to be sitting all day, their blood pressures tend to be a little higher. Doesn't mean elevated, but a little higher than those who may be more physically active because of their lifestyle or their job or what have you. So that's important to note. I just want to acknowledge those persons in the comment section. I'm not seeing the name. I won't see the name until afterwards. So if you want Facebook, if you want me to see your name on Facebook, you'll have to give StreamYard permission somewhere at the top of this thread. I'm seeing somebody mention here that I have such a low tolerance to pain. I'm sure my blood pressure goes up when I'm in pain. Well, the only way to find out is to check your blood pressure when you're having pain. That's one way to know if your blood pressure goes up during pain. But when you're in pain, it can cause your blood pressure to go up. And the question here, I'm curious as to why the top number would be higher and the bottom one is lower. Very good question. So I'm not sure if you heard that I mentioned the top number represents when the heart is contracting, when it's pumping. So the blood is rushing out and it's going faster. And so that number tends to be a higher number because there's a greater pressure that would be needed when the heart is contracting. And then when the heart is relaxing, when it's at rest, so the heart pumps lub, dub, lub, dub. So it's contracting, it's relaxing. So the contracting number is the forceful number where the blood is rushing out of the heart. And then the blood, when the heart relaxes and the blood is, the heart is refilling with blood rather, then that would be the bottom number. So that's why one is higher. The top number is higher than the bottom number because there's a greater force that's exerted when the heart is contracting and a smaller force that's exerted when the heart is relaxing. So when the heart relaxes, it's refilling with blood. And when the heart contracts, it's pushing the blood out from the heart to the rest of the body. So that's why there's that difference with the numbers. I hope that answers your question. All right. Oh, hi, Miss Norton. Good evening, and I'm seeing good evening. Right, so that's the difference between those two numbers. They are both important, but it's just a difference with the amount of pressure because we're measuring the pressure inside of the arteries. So I gave this little example of this being the artery, and the pressure that's being exerted is the pressure that's forced on the walls of the artery, on the inside walls of the artery. All right. Okay, so I want to go back to the different parts of the body that can be affected by your blood pressure. Of course, anywhere blood goes, that part of your body can be affected. But I want to focus on the eyes. As I said, the eyes, the brain, the heart, the kidneys, and the big vessels, which are usually most of the big vessels are in your legs. So let's look at the eyes. Now, when your blood pressure, and I'm talking about uncontrolled blood pressure over a period of time, I'm not talking about because if anybody blood pressure can go up. So if, as I said, if you're in pain, if you get bad news, so for instance, you got terrible news, whatever that news may be, whether it's a loss of a family member or friend, whether it's a divorce, or if it is the loss of a friendship, a breakup from a partner, the loss of a job, a house, career, child. Any of these things, high stressful things, can cause your blood pressure to spike. Doesn't mean it will stay up, but it can cause your blood pressure to spike. Certain foods can cause your blood pressure to spike as well. So off the bat, all tin foods, all fast foods, all processed foods, they're usually very high in sodium, in salt. That can cause your blood pressure to increase as well. So it's important to be mindful of how much of these types of foods we are consuming, and also our level of physical activity has an effect on our blood pressure. So as I mentioned, if you have a more active lifestyle, if you're more active, you have a more labor intensive job, or you're an athlete, you play a lot of sports, or you're very active in the gym or exercise, your blood pressure would tend to be on the a little lower than somebody who has a more sit down job or sedentary lifestyle. And medications as well can affect your blood pressure. All medications, as simple as paracetamol is, they all have side effects, and some of them can have effects on your blood pressure. So, a very common medication that we like to take that can have an effect on your blood pressure is ibuprofen. Ibuprofen can have a negative effect on your blood pressure, and it can increase your blood pressure. So persons who have already been diagnosed with high blood pressure are advised to either totally avoid or limit the use of um, ibuprofen because it can affect your blood pressure. So let's look at some of the complications that can be caused from uncontrolled high blood pressure. So I'm going to start with the eyes, and off the bat, blindness. Now, if your blood pressure is not under control, and it's not under control for a prolonged period of time, as I said, our bodies are super remarkable, and it bends, it stretches, it twists, it turns, it adapts to its environment. But after a while, it has a limit, just like everybody has a limit. Our bodies also have a limit. And so if there's no intervention, then our bodies will eventually break down. So if our blood pressures are uncontrolled for a prolonged period of time, then it can cause the vessels in our eyes to pop. That can cause us to have bleeding at the back of our eye, and it can also cause us to go blind. So that would be one of the complications of uncontrolled high blood pressure for a prolonged period. Then the brain. The brain, again, Uncontrolled for a prolonged period can cause the vessels in your brain to either develop a clot or cause a bleed, and that causes a stroke. And so there are two types of strokes. You can have a bleeding stroke or you can have a clot stroke. Basically, there's an obstruction. Remember our artery? If there's an obstruction here, either from a clot or if there's a break in the artery that causes a bleed, that can leak out into our brain and it can cause us to have a stroke. Very common with high blood pressure. Then the heart, similarly, a bleed or a clot can be in the heart and cause us to have a heart attack. And that's what causes a heart attack. If you have a clot in the heart, in one of the arteries of the heart, or if one of the blood vessels bursts because there's so much pressure. Remember, blood pressure is that force that's caused on the artery. And so if there's too much force because the blood pressure spikes or stays high for too long, it can cause a break, and that can cause a bleed in your heart and you can get a heart attack. Another common complication of uncontrolled high blood pressure is kidney failure. And it's super common, very common. And it's usually due to uncontrolled diabetes or uncontrolled hypertension. But I'm focusing on high blood pressure tonight. So if your blood pressure is not well controlled, it can cause your kidneys to shut down. And again, the body is so remarkable. Most persons have two kidneys and we can live with one. So if one shuts down, the body will still function the way it should with the one kidney. But if they both shut down, then we have a problem. And the kidneys are those organs in your body that filters, basically the filter system of your body, eliminating toxins, filtering all the whatever is going through your blood. And so if your filter system, imagine if you could no longer dispose the garbage from your house. And so your garbage is piling up. You're not able to dispose it. Eventually, it's going to cause a problem. And it's the same with your kidneys. If your kidneys shut down, there's no system in place to get rid of those toxins. The blood is not being filtered of things that it should be eliminating through the urine. And so your body is basically being poisoned. And that is how persons would end up on hemodialysis machines to filter. Basically, what the hemodialysis machines do is take the blood from your body while simultaneously filtering it and then taking it back into your body. So if your body doesn't have the ability to filter out its own blood, that machine will do it for you. And this is a life-saving device for many persons, but it's also it's very taxing on the body after a while. And persons, although your quantity, the life may be prolonged a little bit more, your quality of life is really diminished if you have to go on a dialysis machine. And your life expectancy also drops. Then the last organ I wanted to focus on, or part of the body, is the vessels. So the actual arteries that I am talking about with the blood and the force and the pressure, they run all over your body. And so anywhere in your body, you can develop a bleed or a clot. They usually start in the legs because the legs are where we have the biggest vessels in our bodies, and then they get dislodged somewhere. So as the blood flows through the body, it might get thrown to your brain, you get a stroke. It can be thrown to your heart, you get a heart attack. It can be thrown to your lungs and you get a pulmonary embolism. It can be thrown anywhere and it can cause you to have some sort of life-threatening problem. So what can we do? What can one do to either reduce one's risk or reduce the risk of developing any one of these complications of uncontrolled high blood pressure. First of all, we got to check our blood pressure and see where it is. We got to get a baseline to know what your normal blood pressure is. I don't have high blood pressure, but I check my blood pressure all of the time because I want to make sure that I'm maintaining a normal blood pressure. Two would be to, as I mentioned about foods, so I'm going to mention about food, level of physical activity, and managing stress. So I want to start with stress because from clients that I've seen, the root cause of a lot of the issues, whether it's migraine, whether it's high blood pressure, whether it's headaches or sleeping issues, the underlying cause is something stress related, either in the home or in the workplace or some sort of personal stress that they're not coping well with. Persons are not coping well with stress. I mean, it is remarkable to know that a lot of people are going through really heavy stuff. And checking their blood pressure might be the last thing that they're thinking of. But these stressful events do have an effect on our blood pressure. And so we have to get in the habit of finding ways, and there's no one size fit all and there's no one off thing that you can do to manage stress. There's usually a series of things that has to be done over a period of time that help you to continuously cope with stress, because life will always be lifing, things will always be happening. Life comes with challenges, but it also comes with great rewards. And so it's almost like a balancing scheme to deal with the challenges and the wins and knowing where to find that balance. So managing stress is really, really important in managing your blood pressure. Then the foods that we eat. So off the bat, all tin foods, processed foods, fast foods, they are high in sodium. And sodium is too much sodium, because we do need sodium in our body, but too much of it is terrible on our blood pressures. Terrible on our blood pressures. And so we have to be mindful with the foods that we eat, what it is that we are consuming, look at labels, get in the habit of reading what is actually in it, not just the front, because you might see 100% juice and then you turn around and you see 30% juice from concentrate. And so we have to get in the habit of looking at the labels and being mindful of what we're putting in our bodies. And then the third thing that's very important with managing our blood pressures is our level of physical activity. So I currently have a client who is pregnant, and she asked me, like, how many times should I be exercising? How many days did you exercise when you were pregnant? Now, everybody cannot do what I did, because I was physically active before my pregnancies. And if you were not physically active before your pregnancies, I don't recommend that you just try to go all in 2-3 hours a day. No. Even for somebody who's not pregnant, 10 to 15 minutes, 3 to 4 times a week. If you can't do that, 10 to 15 minutes twice a week to start. It's more about building a habit than trying to get to the gym a certain number of times for how many hours. It's more about building a consistent habit of moving our bodies. Just something as simple as just walking fast enough to get your heart rate up and your breathing increasing a little bit, so that the blood can pump around your body, because that's what we want to do. We want to have the blood moving. We don't want the blood stagnant, because this is where it's a breeding ground for developing clots. And so we want to move our bodies. And if you don't like exercising, do something else. Dance. play a sport, even playing with your children. I went outside with my children yesterday afternoon riding bike. Well, I was pushing my younger son in the stroller. And let me tell you, I didn't realize how fast the time went. When I went to take a drink of water, we were running up and down for 40 minutes. And it felt like it was 10 minutes, getting the heart rate up, just running up and down the street, just having fun, but still exercising at the same time. And some persons don't like to hear the word exercise. So, movement, just getting your bodies moving, getting the habit of moving your body to move stagnant energy out of your body and to also move the blood, have the blood circulating in your body. There are many studies out there. Don't take my word for it, do your own research, that would equate a 20-minute cardiovascular exercise. It means doing some sort of physical activity that gets your heart rate increasing is equivalent to taking or more powerful than taking an antidepressant. So if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling down, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling heartbreak and loss, you're just feeling low energy, move your body, whether it's dancing, whether it's doing boxing, swimming, riding, some sort of sport, just move your body. And those happy hormones will be secreted in your body and it will automatically lift your mood. So get in the habit of moving your body. So I have two gifts for you and they're totally free. There's no cost. I have an overview of high blood pressure and I will put the link in the group. So if you're not already in the group, if you're watching on Instagram and you're not already in the group, you can pop on over to Facebook. It's a private support group to help you on your health journey, a happy, healthy you, body, mind, soul. And I will drop the link for the overview of high blood pressure where you can have this information, because unless you were taking notes, you'll probably forget by tomorrow everything that I said. So you can download that little sheet. And also there is a checklist of things that you can do to manage your blood pressure without medication. And so I would encourage you to get those. I have them on the PayHip shop. And I will also be having a workshop. This will be a virtual, low cost workshop that it will be a masterclass about high blood pressure. And so we will go more in depth. It will be about an hour and a half of getting more in detail with high blood pressure and how you can manage your high blood pressure. So whether you want to learn more about high blood pressure, whether you want to learn how to manage your high blood pressure, or you're just curious about what you can do to prevent yourself from getting high blood pressure, then that masterclass would be for you. So I'll be putting more details as the time gets closer, but that will be next month, February let me just confirm the date. It is February the 15th. So it's a Thursday. It will be the third Thursday in February. So February the 15th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, I will be having a master class on high blood pressure because this is a worldwide issue. And so we need to tackle it one blood pressure at a time. And first, by learning more about blood pressure and making small changes, because change doesn't happen like overnight. We do have to make tiny baby steps in order to make a big change. And so if any of the information was helpful, please let me know. If you have any questions afterwards, you can drop that in the comment section and I will put the links for the overview of high blood pressure in the group. And I will also put the link for the checklist of managing your blood pressure without medication. And also I will drop the flyer for the masterclass next month, which will go more detail than what I went through tonight, that you can learn more about how you can manage your blood pressure without medication. All right, so that will be it for me. I'm just going to put the banner at the bottom for you to check out the PayHip store. And so if you want to have, there are lots of free resources and low cost resources on PayHip that you can check out so that you can be on your way to having a better control with your health. All right, so thank you for those who tuned in, and thank you to those who may be watching afterwards in the replay. And as always, stay happy and stay healthy. Bye.